Let's learn some more tools. The eyedropper tool. To show you the eyedropper tool, first I'm going to set up a few colors on the canvas. So I'll just put a little dot over here, change the color, put another dot, and so on. So the eyedropper tool, you can access it by pressing the letter I on your keyboard, and that will pop up the tool. And if it's not the one at the front, just make sure you're choosing the eyedropper tool, the first one in the group. What the eyedropper does is it selects color. So you can click on any pixel in the canvas and it will soak up that color. So if I click on the red, pink, the green, or the blue, you can see the foreground color changing every time I click. Another way to use the tool is to click and hold. So if you click and hold, that little circle pops up. The top is showing you the foreground, the bottom of the arc is showing you the background. So as I drag the mouse, the second I pass over to a pixel of a different color, it will be updated. So this is a cool way to soak up the color from the canvas and put it into your foreground color so that you can use it. So that's the eyedropper tool. Next tool I want to show you is the gradient tool. So to find this, press the letter G on your keyboard. G for gradient, but it could be confusing because sometimes it's actually the paint bucket tool that's shown over here. So if you see this paint bucket tool, just be sure to click and hold or to right click and change it to the gradient tool. So the gradient tool, we have to access these options up here on the top. So we're going to skip the first two like we did with the brush. And right here, this bar of color with the drop down arrow, the colors might look different for you depending on the previous setting. But basically, this is where you choose the colors for the gradient. So I'm going to click on the bar and it pops up this window. And again, you're seeing the groups. So if you click on the arrow to expand the group, you'll see some presets. Those ones aren't anything spectacular, but this set of blues, I see some stuff that I like. So I'm going to choose one, and it will load this bar over here with the preset. I'm not going to explain this in this video. The gradient tool can get pretty advanced, and we're not going to use it for the first set of exercises, but I did want to introduce it to you because it is fun, and you can quickly do some cool stuff with it. So I'm just going to load the preset and push OK. And I have accessed it by clicking on this bar, but you can also get to it a little bit quicker by clicking on the arrow. If you click on the arrow, you can simply get to a folder, choose your gradient, push enter, and you're done. So with the gradient tool, the idea is to click and drag, and it will create a gradient from the click origin to the click endpoint from the two colors you have selected. And just take note of which gradient style you have selected over here. So this is the first option, and it's the linear gradient. And another one, which we tend to use more often than others, is the radial. So you can choose linear or radial, but I find it's easier to demonstrate using the linear gradient on what it's doing. So I'm going to click on the left side over here and drag across to the right over here. And you see how it paints with that beautiful gradient? So it started with the first color where I clicked, and it transitioned to the last color where I released. So I went left to right, so you see the transition going left to right. If I go top to bottom, you'll see the blue on top and the purple on bottom. Kind of didn't go straight, so it went a bit diagonal, but you can do it in any direction and you'll see the gradient appear. So that's the gradient tool. It's pretty cool. And this is one situation where I actually like the new feature of these groups because they actually put together some pretty nice gradients right out of the box for you. So you don't need to worry too much about customizing your gradient at this point because you have many beautiful gradients you can choose from using these presets. Let's get to the paint bucket. Let me just clear my canvas. Nice little time for me to show you some more advanced features of this area over here. So just above the color pickers, you have this little button which looks like a mini color picker. What it is, it resets the foreground and background colors to the default black and white. So if I'm going to click here, forget black and white, and this arrow switches them, it swaps them. So you can click on that to swap the foreground and the background color. Let me just put it back because I want to use the eraser to erase properly. There we go. So the paint bucket tool, it's also grouped with the gradients, so you can press the letter G on the keyboard to find it, or you can access it by clicking with the mouse. Paint bucket, and the paint bucket uses the foreground color, and what it does is you could imagine it's like taking a bucket of paint and pouring it in that position where you clicked, and the paint will fall out of the bucket and fill the space. And you can imagine it like the room you're in. If you were to pour a bucket of paint into the room that you're in, it's going to keep filling the space until it encounters what? A wall. So it's going to stop filling once it hits a containing wall. So in this case, there is no walls interfering. The walls are the walls of the canvas, so when I click, it fills the entire space. There you go. But if I were to introduce some artificial walls, you'll see how this works. So let me use the brush tool and a different color to create some walls. So now when I use the paint bucket tool, it's going to behave much differently. Let me choose a different color over here. So now if I were to click on the left side over here, it's going to fill the space until it encounters the wall, which is a new color. Let me change colors to that darker blue and click over here. And there you have it. So the paint bucket will select the pixel that you clicked on and start filling similar colors. And it will keep filling these similar colors until it hits a wall of a different color. You can really expand on this and keep doing that. So I'm going to fill the wall itself. And you see, kind of fun. But be careful, you see this edge it just left? So you have to be careful. It has what's called a tolerance, and you have to be careful of what this tolerance is. I'm not going to cover tolerance right now, but what I do want to cover is this thing called contiguous. Right now, contiguous is on. So if your paint bucket was behaving differently, you might want to check that setting. With contiguous on, that's the behavior. So let me just reset this and do some cleanup with the brush. Okay. So it's going to take me a minute just to set up this little demonstration, but hopefully it will be useful. And it's actually something that will be useful in one of the exercises. So what I'm going to do is create those artificial walls again. But this time I'm going to divide the canvas into a bunch of different rectangles. Little tic-tac-toe board for you. So with contiguous on, the paint bucket will be constrained by these walls, as you can see. However, with contiguous off, it works very, very differently. Instead of being contained by these walls, it simply works by matching colors. So let me select a blue. So now if I were to select, if I were to click on the purple over here with the paint bucket, it's not going to care about these walls. What it's going to do is match this color on the entire canvas. So if I click on the color over here, whoops, I forgot to turn off contiguous. So if I click on, try that again, click on the color over here, you see how it replaced both of those rectangles? Let me show you again. Let me change to a different color, super bright yellow to burn your retina. So if I click on the blue now, you see how it replaced all of the blue? So this is a very, very quick way to replace all of a color inside your canvas. Let's do that again with the orangey thing. Replace all the color. And if I were to repeat with the yellow, all the yellow is replaced. So that's the basics of the paint bucket. This contiguous option is extremely important when you're working with it, because with contiguous on, to summarize, it's going to be constrained by the walls. With contiguous off, it will not be constrained by the walls. And it will simply replace all of that color you clicked on in your canvas. So that will be extremely useful for your exercise. And I think that's all I have to say about the paint bucket and the gradient tools. Just keep in mind there is this feature called the tolerance that we will explore later in the course, which affects how this works. For now, just make sure you have this tolerance of 32 over there. I should have said that before, but that is a good default number to be working with. Just stick to 32 and you should be fine. So that is it for the paint bucket, gradient, and eyedropper tool.